and we'll raise it up a little bit. So I've got all these bolts loose, these 6 bolts, and they are, I believe there's 3 different sizes here. Let's see if I can get him out now. Okay, it's coming out. Sweet. You do have to jack it an inch because I tried. And here's the other one back here. So these are the 2 I couldn't show you just a minute ago. This one and this one. And this is the guy you can't get out while it's still, the engine's down at the bottom. This is a bleeder valve right here. Oops, turn the light down. So you don't have to worry about that right now. But anyway, then there's an O-ring for this pipe, which is down in here. There's an O-ring, so we'll replace that. So we need to get the thermostat housing off. This is your thermostat behind here. There's a pipe here with 2 bolts. So you can just remove that if you're just going to replace the thermostat. But we need to get to the water pump, which is behind here. So you take out, there's 2 10mm bolts. They're about 3 inches long. There's one here. There's one down below here where I can't film. And then there's a nut, which is on the stud. So let me show you on the new one here. So the thermostat housing is connected here with one 10mm nut onto this bolt, and then there's one bolt here, one bolt there, and then your O-ring goes in here. So we're going to replace that. So here's what we came for. So there's our water pump. That's that O-ring I was telling you about for the thermostat housing. I'm going to take these 2 bolts out. I got a new thermostat. I'll replace that while it's up here. I did leave that hose back there connected because it was a bitch. And what else was I going to say? Oh, the pulley, the water pump pulley still won't come off. So I just got it floating here. We'll just make sure that that's on there before we put the new one. And you can see those bolts go all the way down there. So I think there's about 16 of them that go from here all the way up to here and around here. So, all right, I'll take that off and then I'll show you guys the installation process with the torque sequence. So after more than a couple of minutes getting all those bolts out, all 16 of them, I think this sucker's ready to come out. Bring it out with the pulley. There we go. All right. So we'll make sure that that's on there beforehand. I think if I jacked the motor up a little more, I probably could have snuck this out. It was pretty close. So here's the old one. Listen to that. Yeah, it's shot. And then there's a lot of side-to-side play. Those bearings are gone. So no good. Here's the replacement one. So see how smooth this is. And what I noticed was they both say this is an OEM, so this is, I don't know how you pronounce it. It looks like Aisin or something. It's right here. It's A-I-S-I-N. So they're both in the same location. And right where this one says Toyota, which they want like $140 for this one, here's the replacement Aisin. They ground it off. So they took off the logo, the Toyota logo. I don't know if you guys can see that, but it's right there where it would have been. So anyway, it's an OEM part for a lot less. So right in here is the gasket that we need to replace. So I'm going to pry this old one off, and we got a new one. Oops, that didn't take too much. Whole thing popped right off. And here's that. So it comes with a new one. They're self-sealing, and we're going to replace that also. But before we do that, I'll clean up the surface here, make sure everything's clean, wipe everything down, and we'll be good to go. All right, before I forget, I want to show you guys this little printout. Erico was kind enough to send me. This has the torque specs on it, and you can see exactly what bolts get torqued to what. You've got A, B, and C bolts, so some of them are 10 millimeter, some are the 12 millimeter. All right, so to get the thermostat out, we've got two 10mm nuts here. I'm going to remove those and get this pipe here out of the way. All right. Make sure you got a catch pan down below. This thing's still bleeding. So there's our thermostat. And I'll go clean this little pipe up. Anyhow, what we're going to do is, what you want to take notice is that little pinto's on top. And what that basically is doing is allowing air to escape, trapped air. So let me grab a pair of pliers and yank that out. Wiggle this sucker out. Should come out fairly easy. There we go. The new one comes with a new gasket. If it doesn't, you got to get one. And it's that simple. That's all it is to it. Let's get the other one. Make sure that that little pintle is pointing up in the same direction. The surface is all clean. I don't have any corrosion or anything here. We should be fine. And let me get the pipe, which I've cleaned up also, the mating surface, and get this bad boy on. And then I'll just tighten up these nuts. And I'll tighten up these nuts. Get them good and snug. You don't have to get too crazy. Torque to proper specs, let's put it that way. Okay. All right, so what I like to do is, when I have this many bolts coming out of one thing, to save a lot of time and headache, I make a little template. So this is a shape of the water pump. It's a little bit hard to see, but there's ink there. And as I took a bolt out, I just put it through in that corresponding spot, so I know what goes where. I noticed some sealant. It looked like sealant on the end of the threads. I confirmed it with the flat rate master here on YouTube. Said, yep, they need sealant. So I like to use this ultra gray Permatex product. Cleaned up the threads with a wire brush. Didn't get too crazy, and then put a little bit of goo on there. So they're all ready to go in. The only thing I need to do now is get the water pump, or get the gasket in place, put the water pump in. You won't be able to see what I'm doing, so I'm not going to film it. But I will get all those bolts in. We've got the torque specs right here. I'll make sure to put a picture in here. You can pause it if you have to, with the proper torque specs. Bolt A's are 16 foot-pounds, and bolt B's and B and C are torqued to 9.1 Newton meters, or 81 inch-pounds, which converts to just under 7 foot-pounds. They're not very tight. So, as Eric said, no ugga-duggas. All right, let's get in there. I don't think I talked about the gasket. I think earlier I said this was rubber. This is actually metal. It's an all steel gasket on both sides, goes in dry. And the way you know you're facing forwards here, I mean, it can only go one way really, is this center part where the impeller is domed in, concave, where it bumps out on the back. So that goes in that way. I'll hold it in place while I put the water pump in front of there, get a couple bolts started, and then we'll torque them down in that sequence that we saw there. I'll start from the middle here and slowly put torque on my way out towards the outer edges, and that'll be it. So the water pump is all bolted in now. The pulley for the water pump is bolted in with those 4 12mm bolts. And next I'm going to put a new tensioner pulley on and a new idler pulley, and then I'll actually put the belt on before I even attempt to drop this thing down. So I'll put the belt on, then I'll put the thermostat back in, got the new gasket in place. The replacement, let me zoom in, has these little fingers on it. So it just goes in dry. See those little fingers? It kind of holds in with pressure, and that makes it easy. So we'll put those bolts and that nut back in, and then we'll put the engine mount back on, set it down, bolt the bottom mounts up, bolt the top mount up, put new coolant in the radiator. We'll bleed it. We got the bleeder screw here, and there's also a bleeder at the top of this upper radiator hose right here. I believe that's a 6mm hex, and we should be getting pretty close here. So I got all the pulleys on, belts on, got the thermostat back on, the new radiator, lower radiator hose is on, and just putting coolant in the system here. So open up the, of course, the radiator cap here, take that off. I'm filling this up here and opening this little bleeder valve. I think I showed it to you earlier. I take that out, and what I do is I'm pouring this in until this bubbles up, so that way I know the radiator is completely full. Then we'll let it run. When it does a couple of heat cycles, can try to bleed off some air back here, and we'll get to the next step. So I'll probably start by putting the upper engine mount on, then obviously the lower engine mount, check for leaks, squeaks, and we should be good to go. I got to put this splash shield back, and that'll be it. Well, here comes the big reveal. I did open this bleeder back here that I showed you earlier, let the extra air out. Radiator's topped off. I checked the new hose, make sure it wasn't leaking, the drain cock wasn't leaking. I'm going to go in the car now. I'm going to start it. If I hear anything weird, I'll be shutting it off right now, and if it blows up, you'll get a good view. Anyway, hopefully not. What was I going to say? The lower mount and the upper mount are not in. It's just floating. So if I have any leaks or anything at the water pump, I can easily get to that right now and take care of it. So that's basically what I want to do. I'm going to let it run for a little bit. I'll fire it up. I'll shut it down, and I'll check for leaks. So let's do that. Here we go. I'm not shutting the camera off. I'm doing it live. All right. There goes nothing. Alright, there's our cold start. So far everything sounds good. The new bearings, idler, tension bearings for pulleys sound good. As soon as this warms up a little bit, I imagine there'll be a little bit of smoke, just that crap burning off everything that's spilled and dripped. I did use the pulleys down with some brake clean, try to get as much antifreeze off as I can so I can tell if there is a leak. It's not something from the old pump. Here, I'm going to get you a close-up. I'm going to give you guys a close-up of that pulley now, the water pump pulley, because we can see it really well without the mount in the way. You can see it really well. See how smooth it is now. Remember before we had that wobble. Wobbling like crazy. I've done a video where I had a harmonic balancer on the Ford F-150 was wobbling, had a slight wobble, which sounds like a cricket living in there. So what happens is the pulley, the side of the pulleys puts pressure on that belt and it gives it that little chirp. So it's not always just a bad belt making a chirp sound. This will help you guys out if you get mixed up. This is the upper motor mount, and I just wanted to go over these 6 bolts. This is the one here that's a real bear to get to, not this one down here. I mean, you can get to them to get out. So when you raise the engine up, you can kind of squeeze it out. But anyhow, there are 3 different size bolts. So I want to show you what's what. So you can see on the back here, you know, these are all about the same length right now, the way they're sitting. But these 2 here are the shortest. This one, little guys, and this one. These 2 in here are long. These are super long. There's another long one. That's the one that's hard to get out. That's this one. And then there's a medium. There's one medium. We'll call it medium. So we've got 2 short, 1 medium, 3 long. Just like we were ordering fast food. So I've got the engine mounts down here all back together. The 3 right there. And then these 2 that are right back in there. That one and that one. And what I wanted to show you is where I jack up the engine from. I put a piece of 2x4 blocking on top of the jack. My floor jack's down here. And on that very back left edge, to my right here is the front of the car. Anyway, it's probably about a 6-inch piece of wood. So that gives you an idea. I put it on the very edge. That's the strongest part. You don't want to put a metal jack right onto the oil pan. You can dent it and crush it. That's where your oil pickup is, so that's not a good thing if you crush your pan. Just giving you some clue what to do. Alright guys, bear with me if you have wind noise, sorry about that. It's mid-December and the cold air is blasting me in the face here. I want to talk to you about the cooling system, or the coolant itself. That bleeder valve that's in the back by the thermostat housing, very important. As you're after you fill it up, you know, the radiator, you want to crack that valve as the engine's running, get the heat or get the pressure to build up and push that air out. Now if you have a bleeder or coolant bleeder system or tool, then it would make your life a lot easier, where you can put a vacuum on the system and then basically it'll suck your fluid in, save you a lot of time. It has taken me quite a while to get the air out of this. And you also have that little bleeder at the top of the upper radiator hose up there at the radiator. I showed you that little black one. It's a 6mm hex. Anyway, so I hope that gives you some advice. I just got back from a test drive here. Let the system build up some good pressure. I'm going to check for leaks. And also, if you have that coolant bleeder kit, you can also check for leaks that way too. If it doesn't hold vacuum, then you know there's an issue right off the bat. So it's a nice tool to have, but if you're only doing this once in a while, you know, you got to justify the cost. Anyway, hope that gives you some insight, and I'm not squinting too bad and the wind's not blowing too hard. Alrighty then, it's all set. I lowered down the engine. I hooked up the 2 brackets for the engine mounts down below, the 2 bolts for the one bracket and the 3 bolts for the other bracket. Hooked up the upper mount, got the dog bone in. That's all set. I just want to go over a few things with you here as far as what you could use when you do this job, or what you might need or consider. One is definitely when you got it all apart, the thermostat. I think I showed this earlier in the video. This came with the gasket, changed that out. This car has 166,000 miles on it. It's almost 10 years old. Might as well do it. Of course, here's the water pump. I use the ASIN brand. This was about 70 bucks cheaper from Rock Auto than it was from Toyota. And as we saw, it looked like they ground off their own name there. But that came with this little pipe O-ring for the thermostat housing. Also came with that gasket O-ring for the actual thermostat housing. So, and of course the water pump gasket all came in this box. The other thing I did was use the ASIN coolant. This is Toyota specific for Toyota, Lexus, and Scion. If you still got a Scion, there you go. So this is that pinkish red stuff. Use that, that's the OEM stuff. And while you're in there, consider replacing that idler pulley and the tensioner pulley. So if they're making noise, it's a good time to do all this stuff while you're in there. I also replaced the lower radiator coolant hose. Since that was looking a little crappy, might as well do it while you're there. It just makes life a lot easier. If you're a DIY guy, take your time with this. Make sure you use jack stands. Be careful lowering and raising the engine. Go slowly. So if you stayed with the video this far, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Hope it helped you out. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do. Click the red button. Any comments or questions about the video, please leave them down below. And I'll see you guys on the next one, so take it easy.